Taking their seats. Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. Yay! All right. Well, for all of you who don't know me, I'm Susan Fasig. I'm the current board president. So glad to have you all here with us tonight. Couldn't be more thrilled to see. Always love seeing the house full of people. I feel like sometimes when I come by, it's not full of people. It's for some meeting or an issue or whatever. So love to see everybody here. Thank you for coming. I'll start with a couple housekeeping items. One, if you haven't found, the bathrooms are over here in the back. There's two, one in the back room here and one in the hallway. So if you need stuff, please do. Also, we usually are very open to everyone exploring the mansion because it is lovely and beautiful. The upstairs though is being rented out shortly, so we would like to make sure we keep that safe. You may know it's on the Airbnb. So you can rent out our whole mansion as an Airbnb. If you looked at that before, we have, I think it's 7 bedrooms. Am I right, Rose? 7 bedrooms? So it's great for a lovely group of people. So hope you can reach out to Allie or Julia with that. And tonight's speaker program is formatted like a fireside chat. So board member Kara Kavensky is going to chat with a fellow board member, Dr. Colette Burnette. So glad to have them joining us tonight, and we're looking forward to all that they have to say and explore. As part of our Marilyn K. Glick Enrichment series, and we love that Marilyn is here to kick us off as well, that we have I'm sorry, I said Marilyn, Marianne.
That's all right. It happens all the time.
I gotta think of that. We have the opportunity for you to honor significant women in your life, and so if you'll look in your program, there are a number of folks that have honored significant women in their lives, and so really special opportunity to do that. So I encourage you to do that, and we're always happy to include more in that program. So check that out for sure. The other thing we'd like to do is thank our sponsors. Obviously, Marianne Glick as our title sponsor. We're thrilled again that she is here. Our gold sponsors, and we have everyone here on the list, are Kenneth and Deborah Rinkins and TechServe. Our silver sponsors are Tom and Dawn Bennett, Beetle Finance, Lilly Endowment, Barnes and Thornburg, and Bose McKinney and Evans. Thank you to all of them. And from our bronze sponsors, we have Peg Kennedy, Rose and Joe Wernicke, Cabello Associates, the National Bank of Indianapolis, Taft Law, and FEG Investment Advisors. So we so much appreciate all of our sponsors. We have a lot to take care of here in this house, as you can imagine. And as Matt, the chair of our facilities committee, well knows, it is an old house and needs lots of love. So one other item I will say before we get started, we do have a number of upcoming events that we're pretty excited about. And we always have a lot of events going on. So do check out our website, thepropileum.org, to see them all. The two big ones coming up, we have our Properly Chic Style Show coming up October 12th, which is always a very fun luncheon time and opportunity to shop, which who doesn't love to shop? And November 18th is a very important date. November 18th is our Salon Society Gala. It's a Saturday. It's from 3 to 6. It's one of our major fundraisers. And this year we are celebrating, we're calling it Visions and Vino, celebrating some of the amazing Indiana artists, so in particular female artists in Indiana. And so we're very excited to be able to profile some of those. We have a number of interesting art-related events that will be going on throughout the house that you'll get to participate in, and we'll have some auction items and things like that. So really important. We'd love for you to come and be part of that. So with that, I am going to turn it over to the fabulous and wonderful Marilyn Glick for her to kick us off. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to hearing your introduction.
Thanks, Susan. Hi, thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm really excited to kick off this year's Women's Enrichment Series named after my mother, Marilyn. My mom's always been a really tremendous inspiration to me. She embodied the characteristics of tenacity, intention, courage, fearlessness, and resiliency. All of our speakers in this series, past and present, embody these characteristics, including our moderator this evening, Kara Kavinsky. Kara is a prolific writer. She's written thousands of human interest stories, including a feature on me and our guest of honor. She is a podcaster and an author. Her first memoir, Finding Joy, is inspired by one of her interviews. She also serves on the board of the Propedeum. Like my mother, our speaker this evening, Dr. Colette Burnette, displayed tenacity and resourcefulness by creating opportunities for herself and made the most of the resources available to her to curate her career. She had to be intentional because her husband was in the U.S. Air Force, and that meant the family would be moving around a lot. Her husband's now retired as a lieutenant colonel, but during his tenure as an officer, you go where you're assigned. Many might view that as a limitation, a barrier, but Dr. Burnette leveraged her lifestyle as an opportunity for growth. One does not become president of a university or earn a doctorate without being adaptable and willing to tackle challenges head on, which exemplifies courage and fearlessness. And especially when you consider that she did not start her doctorate until she was 55. So that takes tremendous courage. She and I were joking that, you don't remember things and retain things quite as well when you're past 50 as you do when you're 20 going through that, so kudos to you. Dr. Burnette's experience in education is vast and diverse, which includes engineering, IT, public service, and more than 2 decades in higher education. No one survives that long in higher education without perseverance, professionalism, and resiliency. She is a staunch believer that education is the great equalizer and not an option. Just over a year ago, she became the first female and the first African American to serve as president and CEO of Newfields. Please help me welcome both Kara and Dr. Colette Burnette.
Well, thank you all again for joining us. You're good on the, excellent. I would love for you to please share some of your earliest memories growing up and some of your influences.
So first of all, good evening everyone, and I'm really honored to be here this evening. I lost my mom on last Tuesday, so if I go into the ugly face cry in a moment, forgive me because I tell a story, because my mom is integrated in all of my life. But my mom was a pistol, and as you described Marilyn, that's also Ruth. So I'm going to channel Ruth tonight, and she was not a crier. So, she was a rock in my life. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, the daughter of Ruth and Colin Pierce. I'm a first generation college student. I didn't know what that really meant until I got into higher education, and I feel like it's something I should put on my resume now because it means something. My dad is originally from Mississippi. He was one of 18, same woman, same man,
oh my gosh.
And a twin. So I grew up in a very large family in Cleveland. And I'm a child of the 60s, which defines who I am, and what I stand for. And I also was good in math. because my mom was a working mother, and my grandmother basically raised me. And so she would go, I lived in a food desert, which I didn't know at the time that's what it was. So we had a little small corner store. And my mom would go, and my grandmother would go, her name was Ozella Wilson, and she had a high school degree, but she could have been a teacher, she could have been a professor, but she didn't have that opportunity. So she would go to the corner store and get butcher block paper and write all the times tables on it. And I could not eat until I could recite them by heart.
Wow.
So my brain was trained in that way. And so I was good in math. I graduated from high school in '75. And if you were black, female, good in math, you were a commodity. So I was highly recruited, and it ended up, my family wouldn't let me leave Ohio. So I ended up at Ohio State. It was not the Ohio State at that time. It was plain old Ohio State. But I love my alma mater. So I had a really small community. Even though I grew up in a really big city. I grew up in the urban area of Cleveland. And I went to public high school. I really attribute my childhood to my tenacity and my resilience and persistence. And I did not know that college was optional. I thought it was the 13th grade because my family just was like, that was what you did after you graduated from high school. It wasn't optional. Until I got there, I was like, people are here by choice. So, and I was afraid of my mother, so I got good grades. And my grandfather drove a Thunderbird. I'm from a family that people love cars. So I own a Thunderbird now. So I've tried to recreate parts of my life, parts of my childhood, and I think that's a reflection of just a wonderful childhood I had.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and I think that it's just a fascinating background, and then the withholding of food until you could recite your math.
They call that child abuse.
So you get a degree in engineering. So you have an undergrad in engineering from Ohio State. Now I'm an IU grad, so let's not talk about it. And you entered into this corporate realm and were in IT, correct? So let's explore your career path a bit and that launch pad. And also I'd like for you to share when you met your husband, because that's kind of key with the military.
So when I graduated from Ohio State with systems engineering, IT has evolved. There's engineering, computer science, information technology, information systems. So I am a computer engineer by undergraduate training. But I don't think I ever really wanted to be an engineer. The adults in my life told me because I was good in math, I should major in engineering to make a lot of money. That's not really true, whatever a lot of money is. So my first job was with Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, Ohio, as an engineer. Blue suit, corporate, nice clothes, nice shoes, living that lifestyle. So a friend of mine was from Dayton. It was her birthday. We go to Dayton. Her mother tells us about this new African-American club called Spunky's was the thing to do. So I met my husband in a bar. And I wrote my phone number on a matchbox because he was so cute. And I just did not want him not to call me. And this is obviously 1981. So we began dating, and he was in the military, and I had no idea really what that lifestyle was. He was an Air Force officer. My husband, we're very different. My husband from the dirty South, I'm from the North. My husband went to a historically black college. He's a Morehouse graduate, and I am from Ohio State University. He grew up in a very small, intimate family by an educated, his mother was a teacher, and I grew up in a very rowdy Cleveland, Ohio family. So we're very different. I'm extroverted, he is extremely introverted. So we're very different. So we meet, we fall in love, and he gets an assignment to England, and in my mind, that was forever away, so we rushed and got married. My mother was like, "Are you pregnant?" No, I'm not. I'm just in love. So we get married, and They cancel his assignment to London or to England, and he gets assigned to Warner Robins, Georgia. And I was like, I've been hoodwinked. So, first assignment, Warner Robins, Georgia, in the 70s, in the early 80s, and all that means. So they had signs posted everywhere that they needed engineers. And I went over to apply, and suddenly they didn't need engineers. I met the affirmative action officer. He was African American at a party. My husband met him first, and my husband told him my story because I was getting on his nerves by this. You can imagine, young newlyweds, I can't find a job. I'm from Procter & Gamble, I got an engineering degree. I have a briefcase. I can't get a job. So we meet this guy. I get the interview because of affirmative action. And because of my credentials, they could not turn me down. They asked me for 24 references. All the barriers that you could potentially think of to stop you from getting a job. So I get my 24 references because I have a resume. So I get a job there on the base, and that was the beginning of our military career. And my children went to 13 different schools as a result of my husband's career. But I don't regret it at all because I would have never left Ohio. I'm from Cleveland, I went to school in Columbus, and then my job was in Cincinnati. I'm a true Buckeye. And I'm from a family that just doesn't travel. So I never would have. My mother's first time really traveling was we were stationed in Turkey. She came to Turkey to live with us. So I do not regret our military career at all. We were serving our country, and it was just a really good thing. But his career was really good to my career. Because of my husband's career, and I was an engineer during that time, I was very marketable. So I had an opportunity to work at the Washington Post. I worked for Washington State Department of Transportation. I just had a lot of really phenomenal career opportunities. My husband decided to retire, hoodwinked me again. I had taken a leap of faith. He said he was going to retire. And so what do you want to do? And I always had an affinity for higher education. I just really feel like it's the great equalizer. I've always been raised that way and thought about that. So I said, I'm going to take a teaching position in a community college to teach computer science. My family thought I was losing my mind because I never said this publicly when I was a president because faculty salaries is a thing. But I made a whole lot less money than I was making in the corporate world. Oh, sure. So I took a leap of faith and got a teaching position, and eventually got moved to an administrative position. My husband did not retire. Hoodwinked again, took one last job back to Dayton, Ohio, Wright-Patterson, which is where he was stationed when we met. So I decided not to go because my son was an 11th grader at the time. And I didn't want to move him again, but then he thought he was the man of the house, so I'm like, okay. And my mom was living with me, and she's very traditional. You do not live with your husband. So I felt pressured, so I got a job there at Central State University, which had been in tremendous duress. It was almost closing. It had tremendous problems, and I was a part of the turnaround administration. I'm very proud of that chapter in my life. So when we started, they had 700 students and were almost closing. They had tremendous financial challenges, and when that president retired, we had over 2,200 students. So literally in 10 years, we turned it around, but I learned a lot. And so when I look back over my life, I've come to know that you learn backwards to live forward. Because everything that you have happen in your life is preparing you for something else. And I felt like I was prepared for my presidency at Houston-Tillotson in Austin, and just like I feel like I've been prepared for my role of my presidency at Newfields. Every chapter leads to the next.
I'd like to talk about, let's just rewind a teeny bit, when you were in Washington State and you were the CIO, and then you became an interim
President.
Okay, let's talk about that only one in the room story that you've shared with me.
So years, you flatten your life when you're talking about it. When that president at Central State University decided to retire, he came to me to meet with me to let me know before he went public that he was retiring. And I knew he was going to retire because he had done really great things, and he and his wife wanted to let it go, rightfully so. And in my mind, and in the mind of 90% of the people on that campus, I was the next president of Central State University, because I was his right-hand person. I was the person testifying at the state level. I mean, I was his person. He traveled a lot, and I ran the campus, so everybody just thought I was the president. Everybody except the board of trustees, and they matter, because I did not have a doctorate. I had what my son called plenty of street cred, but that doesn't get a woman a presidency. So I had a lot of fear going up to that about applying to go and get my doctorate, but I had never done it. I always had excuses. My children, when they get older, my husband's career, even my parents, I just had all kinds of excuses. We can't afford it right now. So at that point, I was talking earlier to Marianne, I got pushed out of and I hadn't even applied when we came back from Turkey into Washington State. I had applied at the University of Washington and got rejected for something really silly. So I had fear that I was going to get rejected again, even though I'd always wanted a doctorate. Like I always wanted to just have that credential, that experience. So when I applied, when I found out that I was not going to get the presidency, because what the president told me, he said, the board loves you, they want you to stay, but they're not going to hire you as the president because you don't have a doctorate. It was the first time in my life that I did not have the qualifications for a job. And that's very jarring. So that one morning, I went to a coffee shop and I applied for 3 different schools. I needed references. So I called the chancellor back at Pierce College where I had worked, that faculty position I had. And she had always encouraged me, another woman, to get my doctorate, and was frustrated that I kept putting it off. So she was a reference, but at the end of the conversation she said, Colette, she called me the next morning, she said, Colette, I've thought about this overnight and I have a presidency coming up in my system. Do you want to come out here and be the interim president of Pierce College? So I was packed and out of there like within 3 weeks. It was like deuces. I saw my husband and everybody was in the rearview mirror, because that rejection had pushed me into, I gotta live my life because it's passing me by and I'm living it for other people, not for myself. And even my mom's death has pushed me into this space of going back to my fearless self, because I let life kind of get on you. So I go do that interim presidency, and what Kara's referring to, I was sitting in a room they have quarterly meetings of all of their community college presidents, all men, predominantly white men. And everybody's going around the room introducing themselves, and I'm very comfortable in that environment. I'm an engineer, so I've always been in male-dominated spaces. So they would get to me, and I would be Miss Burnette. Everybody else was Dr. this, Dr. that, Dr. that. So I had on a different color uniform, literally and figuratively. So I said, you know what? I gotta get my doctorate. So I went back to those 3 schools. I applied again. I was sharing earlier. Keep in mind my childhood. So I applied to the University of Pennsylvania because I did not, because it was a 2-year, very intense get in, get out program, very intense program. And I did not want to be 67, 8 years old still trying to get my doctorate, because it can go on for forever. So when I got in, my son, I called my son, who has his master's from Columbia, and I'm all excited, and at the end of our conversation he says, welcome to the club, Mom. So I said, what club? And he's like, oh my God, my mother does not know that she's going to an Ivy League school. Because in my mind, it did not mean anything. But back to fear, that imposter syndrome started getting in my mind, because I'm from Ohio State. I was around all these what they call medallion school people, NYU, Columbia, all the other. Either they worked there or they had credentials from there. But then after I got in there and I looked around the room, I realized I was just as smart, if not smarter, because of my own life experiences and practical experiences that others in the room did not have. So, and what Marianne was alluding to, now I'm 55 at this time. So I had to read things 9 times. I had the flash thing going on, my personal summers. My husband's getting on my nerves. My kids, they were at this space where they needed money for everything. Like, don't you pay taxes? So all of that was happening in my life, but I would do it all over again in the exact same way. I don't want to, but I would do it. So thank you for that question.
I also love how you had shared with me one time that when you were exploring the doctorate and you were Googling, can you just add that?
So one of my friends, guilted me into it because she really pierced my soul with a question. She said, how old are you? And at the time I was 50 because this was as leading up to it. And she said, well, how old are you going to be in 5 years? I'm like, I'll be 55. We were kind of double nickel at the time. So I said, well, I'll be 55. She said, well, you're going to be 55 without your doctorate or not? You're going to make a choice. You got to keep asking yourself that question, or you're going to keep being in your own way, getting in your own head. So when I got to this space, when I was jarred into, I didn't get this job because I didn't have the credential, I Googled, am I too old to get a doctorate? Half the internet said, you are too old. And the other half said, oh no, go for it. So I went for the go for it. That's a thing. People do doctorates, they do studies on it about when's your prime time in your life to pursue higher education.
Yeah. Well,
I did not write my doctorate on that because I didn't want to know.
Well, the schools want to know who to target. That's their marketing department. So one of my favorite stories that you've shared, and I think it's extremely significant and one that everyone will appreciate, is sharing the interview process when you were finishing your doctorate, hadn't quite gone to the thesis or what?
Defend
Yeah,
my dissertation.
you haven't defended your paper for Houston Tillotson University in the job interview process. That I would love for you to share that, please.
So Kira has a great memory. I love her. So I knew I wanted to be a president of a historically black college. I have an affinity for them because in my own family, my dad is probably one of the smartest men that I know. But he grew, he was born in 1933. So when he was at college age, blacks could not go to college. And black colleges were the colleges to really allow blacks to get an education. So they built the middle class. So for me, I had an affinity and I wanted to, I spent my time at Central State. So I wanted to be a president of that mission. So one of my mentors told me, one of my classmates actually, he said to me that there was a job opening up in Austin, Texas. There was a historically black college there in Austin, Texas. So I Googled it and it was like flat, not that impressive. And it's Texas. I'm like, I don't want to do that. But one of my mentors told me you should do it for the practice of being in a presidential search because they're so intense. So I threw my hat in the ring because he pressured me to do it. It's like I thought, and my mentor was like, you should do it. So I threw my hat in the ring and I kept getting next round, next round, next round. So I was defending my dissertation at the time, so when they asked me for the time for the final interview, I picked the last day that they offered. So I'm the last candidate to come in for the interview. So, and it's on-campus interview. So I fly into Austin, and this is what people advise you things. I've always worn my hair real short like this, for as long as I can remember. And while I was in school, I didn't have time to go to the barber every 2 weeks. I had like a really fresh cut. So I let my hair grow out and I had like the Angela Davis afro thing. So one of my friends said, oh my God, that doesn't look presidential. See how people can say things and they put that in your mind. Yeah. So I got my hair flat ironed, got it straightened, and it was long, like on my shoulders. So I had my little cute hairstyle. I came out of that hotel room that morning and my hair was like Marge Simpson's because of the humidity. because it had rained the night before, so my hair rose up. And I looked at myself in the hotel window as I was going out, and I said, you know what, I'm practicing. So I don't care how I look. So I, go on the interview, and this is a true story. People who know me really well don't believe this happened to me, but it did. So I'm practicing, and I could feel my hair getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and I was cursing in my mind. The woman had told me to get my hair straightened. It was a mess. You're making me relive that. So
It's worth the trauma. Just
keep going. So the guy picked me up at the hotel, my driver for the day, my host for the day, and he drives me all around the University of Texas's campus, which is huge. And I went to a big school, so that didn't intimidate me, but I'm thinking, why is he driving me all around the University of Texas? Because that's what they were proud of. So my little school was just like I'm calling it my school now, but Houston-Tillotson was just like, it was just like not a name. And I got out of his car, true story. These things don't happen to me on a routine basis. I get out of the car and I got this feeling over me, like a physical feeling, like something was touching me. And even when I think about it now, and like a voice, or how you say, something told me, something said, stop practicing. This is where you're supposed to be. True story. And I stopped. It scared me. So I stopped practicing. I went through that interview. I was serious. So I went back to Ohio, and I told my husband, I got to get that job. And he was like, what happened? And then when I told him what happened, he was like, are you drinking? Because it just wasn't me. So I really wanted that job, and I got it. It was one of the best chapters of my life. It was a true turnaround experience, and I don't toot my horn often, but I'm very proud of this. I won the Anti-Defamation League's Community Hero, and I won Austinite of the Year, and that was because of. But I add to that in my faith and my walk, God put around me people for us to do some really big things there in Austin, Texas. So that is, it's an experience, I feel like it just happened to me a couple of years ago, but that was almost 9 years ago now. And I was going to retire after 5 years because everything we accomplished, everything the board hired me to do, we had done. But then COVID hit. And I wasn't going to leave my university in COVID. I wanted to steer it through COVID. I felt that need.
So you hoodwinked your husband that time.
Yeah, because he never lived in Austin. Because he was consulting at the time. Because when he retired from the military, he consults when it's not golf season. And he did not like Austin. So, but we've been married 41 years, and we're a military family, retired. If my husband had lived in Austin, I would not have been able to do what I did there, because he's still a husband. He's not here, so like I said, so I love him dearly, but he's still a husband. He's still a husband. So, I'll stop there.
Well, and when you successfully led the university through COVID, and then share how you handled that.
So I decided I was going to retire because my mentor told me, always leave, best advice ever, always leave the party when you're having fun. Best advice ever. When you stay too long in a job, or you stay too long, in something in your life, it never pans out. You don't leave it with this positive, wonderful thing. So I knew I wanted to retire. But I'm an overachiever, so I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what the something was. So one of my dear friends, a really sharp woman, she's an entrepreneur, she had a friend who was like a coach. And she said, just have a conversation with her and tell her what your passions are, and she'll, tell you what you should do to find out what your next thing is. So in my mind, I'm a practicum professor at the University of Texas. I teach a class for them. So in my mind, I was going to do some adjunct teaching. My husband and I were going to travel around. That was what I thought in my mind. So I talked to her, And she said, she helped me ask the right questions and everything. And I felt really good after I talked to her. And then about maybe 4 days later, one of her colleagues called me and said that they had a position that they thought I would be a perfect fit for. So, because I had sent her my resume in preparation for our conversation. So she sent me the prospectus, and all I saw on there was art museum. And I thought, that's not me. Like, I love art, but I'm not a director of the art museum. And the firm was Korn Ferry. We all know the story of Newfields. So they were persistent. I mean, they were super persistent. And they were saying that we're not looking for a director of the art museum. You're going to be able to hire a director. We're looking for someone to lead a cultural institution. And your background, what you've experienced there in Austin, is exactly what this board is looking for this organization called Newfields. So I was not interested because I wasn't interested. But the bigger plan, it was something bigger than me, that same thing. So my son, once again, same son, is an art museum aficionado. So he called me and I said, I got this call about something with some art museum. And I said, the only thing I like about it is that it's in Indianapolis and it's near mommy. Because I was trying to get close to my mother. Because she had, during COVID, her dementia had started to accelerate. So I wanted to be closer to her. So my husband and I were trying to get back to the Midwest, or back to Ohio at the most. So I said, that's the only thing about it. So he said, Indianapolis? And I said, yes. And he said, what's it called? So I had to go look up the prospectus, because I couldn't remember. And I said, it's called Newfields. He's like, Mom, they were in the New York Times. So I said, oh, really? Oh my God, that's impressive. I said, maybe I should go and talk to them. And so he said, let me send you the article. And people think this is crazy, but when I read the article and then I went down the rabbit hole, it made me want the job even more because of my passion for equity and building a beloved community. And when I looked at the pictures and the place, and I could see through what the challenges were, I felt like Korn Ferry is right. I am the right fit for this. So I applied, and here I sit.
So you are the president of a cultural institution. There we go. Two more questions, and then I'll take questions. So, what role has art played in your life leading up to your current position, and how has that evolved or changed by leading Newfields?
That's really a great question. It gives me opportunity to share like a recent experience I had. So when I was growing up, my mom had 2 weeks vacation. She was a key punch operator at the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company, CEI. And she worked there for almost 30 years. She got 2 weeks vacation. During that 2 weeks, she would take my sister and I to every cultural museum in Cleveland. And there are a lot. I have distinct memories of going into the art museum there in Cleveland, the Natural History Museum. There was a science museum that's no longer there. I have distinct memories of that, like through my childhood. My sister and I are 7 years apart. So I remember all the way up until I was like in maybe 10th grade, we would do that her vacation. And then she would reward us at the end with either a trip to Jogga Lake or Cedar Point. So that was her vacation. And that stuck with me. And in hindsight, when I think about that, that was her way of exposing my sister and I to something bigger. And I'm very proud of my sister. I do a sidebar. My sister was a Obama appointee, White House appointee. So I'm very proud of my sister. She now runs her own company in Brooklyn, New York. So she's a consultant. So I'm very proud of my baby sister. So I always had this thing about art and even nature. There was a park there that we would always go to on the weekend. I'd ride my bike there. So it was like a retreat, so to speak, into it, like another world. So that was another thing that attracted me with the position, because I feel like we have not done a good job as a society to expose young people such as myself to the beauty of art and for what they define as art. for the beauty of nature and what they define as those wonderful, beautiful things. We have a responsibility. That's a part of a beloved community because we're more alike than we are different. And things that should bring us together, we often use to divide us. And whether it's intentional or not, it doesn't matter. So that has always had an impact on my life. But I did not see myself as leading an art institution because you think of all the things that you need to know. Now, I've been over the art museum part of the museum for like the last maybe 9 months because Katie Haig, who was doing it at Newfields, at the IMA at Newfields, she took the position to lead the Eiteljorg. She's the director of the Eiteljorg. So I put everybody who is affiliated with the art museum and had them report to me. And I have learned a lot just in that time frame. It's so much, it's 152 acres there at Newfields. We have over 30 departments. And to put a gallery together, there's so many moving pieces. So Newfields had gone through the triple tragedies. COVID, we all experienced COVID, tragic. The brutal murder of Mr. Floyd, we all experienced that, tragic. And then Newfields had its own racial reckoning. I did not find a racist institution. I found an institution that became a poster child for racism in the arts, which does exist, whether we admit it or not. So now we are on an intentional march to be an anti-racist institution, which is different than not being racist. That means that we are leaning into decolonizing our collection, looking at the gaps in our collection. Over in the garden, if we do master gardening, how do we make that open to all? When we do what we were talking about earlier, forest bathing or horticultural forums, when we have the spring blooms, do we have gardeners of color? What do we do as an institution to stretch ourselves? We were talking earlier about the interpretation, how we interpret the art. And so I've learned things that in my lofty mind that I knew art and nature could be a medium to do these things. Now that I've learned more about the science of what happens inside, now I have more tools to be able to see this is how we need to do these things to open ourselves up to be a better institution, to use our trauma to heal ourselves and then to be this rooted anchor institution in Indianapolis. So I've just recently announced a new director, which I'll say this in a room of women. She's a black female, and when we started the process, she was by far the first. But I had to cross every T and dot every I to be sure that she was in fact the best before I brought her on, because for me as a black female, to hire another black female, I'm under tremendous scrutiny. And when I started here, I got tremendous, these hate letters that I'm not qualified. So I did this speech, and I said, I have a doctorate, I have an engineering degree, I have over 20 years as a C-suite executive, I'm a retired university president, I had a good run, I've been married to the same man for 41 years, that's a checkbox for me, and I've raised 2 beautiful children, and I'm still not qualified. So, but if I were a white male, I'd be overqualified. People would be asking me, why did I want that job? So I recognize now, bringing Belinda in, people are criticizing, they criticize me, they're going to criticize me for hiring Belinda, and then they're going to criticize, her name is Belinda Tate, criticize Belinda. She's up for it just like I was up for it. She is by far the best for what Newfields, particularly what the IMA at Newfields needs. She's a scholar, and we need a scholar because we have a best-in-class collection, and we want to maintain our ranking across the world. I was looking for someone that had a national presence to put Newfields at a national level to make us a destination, and the museum is our shining star. So, and it's complemented by the other shining star, which is the garden, which is the garden in the park. So I've learned a lot about art and about how the governance of, governance is not the right word, I've learned the mechanics of an art museum. So it helps me to manage Belinda, because she can't snow me on anything, because I know her stuff now to some degree. But I'm excited about this next chapter at Newfields. And she could have been a purple box, and I would have hired her because of her credentials, and she's the right fit for the IMA at Newfields right now.
We can't wait to meet her. I can't wait to write about her. So one more question, then we'll open it up a bit. What are you most proud of?
My children, hands down. My son is a senior editor for the Chronicle of Higher Education, and my daughter, he lives in Washington, D.C. area, and my daughter is a senior events planner for Amazon Studios. She has a very sexy job. She travels all over the world, spends a lot of people's money. And she is taking me to, I'm a big Beyonce and Jay-Z fan, and my daughter's taking me to see the last Beyonce show in Kansas City, Missouri on October the 1st, and I cannot wait. But she's, my daughter, I want to be her when I grow up. So I'm very, very, very proud of my children.
Thank you so much. There's so many mic drop moments, so thank you. Do we have any questions? We have a few minutes. We'd like to honor the time.
Yes, the newspaper article from the New York Times, was it the one that was in the entertainment section about the gang group?
No, this was the first one that they wrote on the heels of the position description.
Oh, okay.
The one about gang put me in a negative light, where I was new, and they alluded that I was a hire because I was of color, and they also alluded something that I did not say in the interview. She didn't like my answer, so she said I was avoiding it. So that article was also put Newfields in a very bad light. It lifted gang, which is a phenomenal thing, but it did not lift Newfields, because gang ascents, that their ascent was on Newfields' descent. So that's painful.
I didn't take it that way when I read it, but that could be because I'm from Indianapolis and I'm...
Right, so that was a very proudful moment, because if you look at something like that through your lens. So my marketing people, like the picture of me looked very stern. They picked a picture of me with no smile. And then the article talks about basically that Newfields was still struggling with its own stuff. And I was new, I was brand new. So, and that writer is very pro what's happening with gang, which is a wonderful thing. And we as Newfields, well, I'll talk about me. I fully, I spent my career at black colleges creating Mollies and Allens. So I'm proud of them as a person. I consider myself kind of like a mom to them. That they might not know my last name. That's not true, that's not fair. I built a really, but I consider a good relationship with them. So I'm very proud of them. There's space in Indianapolis for what we all do. So Newfields has to find its space as an anchor cultural institution, and the role that we play in lifting the arts in a very large way across the board, because that's Newfields' role. So that story did lift them on a national scale and put Indianapolis on the map when it comes to the arts, which is good for me. And that's why I support Gang, because when they rise, I can rise. And I shouldn't say Newfields can rise. So that's how I look at that. But it was the very first story that put Newfields in a very bad light.
And Molly and Alan are the founders of Gang, if any of you needed that clarification. Any other questions for Dr. Pierce Burnette? Yes?
Hi, thank you so much. I've enjoyed everything you've shared tonight. I'm a longtime member of UCM, and I was wondering, what might you ask of members to help with the anti-racist journey of Newfields?
Thank you. We need feedback, because we can get in our own way and we can think we're doing the right thing, and we're not really filling the need of the community. And I mean the all. And for us, our mission is to enrich lives through exceptional experiences with art and nature. So for me, there's a little carrot that says enrich all lives. So if our members are not feeling like their lives are being enriched in some way, then we're not on a march, because anti-racist is not always about race. It's about equity. It's about inclusion. It's about love. It's about belonging. It's about feeling I belong here. So when you walk in, you see I want to be here. And when I leave, I'm a better person than when I came. So when we offer all these different things, we may be thinking we're doing this thing that we're not doing. So we look for feedback from our members. So as members, we're going to do more like, tell us what your experience was. Give us feedback. Even in the galleries, we've now started asking more questions and more interaction. And there has been focus on artists of color, but we're focusing on a lot of things. But unfortunately, people are only seeing this part of what we're doing. That will pass as we do more. So that little carrot, that all, definitely does mean all. So we look for our members. You're a part of our family, our community. And what healthy families give feedback to each other, good and bad.
Taylor, is there anything that you want Dr. Pierce Burnette to mention? Taylor's their PR person. I just thought I would throw out a softball.
She's doing wonderfully.
Well, thank you, Taylor.
Any other questions? Yes, thank you.
I apologize for actually asking this question because I couldn't get my pen out fast enough. Learn backwards to move forwards.
Right.
Was that what you said?
Yeah.
I don't have the right words.
Yes. I read something from a Swedish philosopher whose name I will not even try to pronounce, but it was about our life's journeys and how we learn backwards, but we live forward. Like if you think about your life, like right now, if you think about your life, every experience is a learning experience, whether it's painful or not. Like the guy that dumped me in college, thank God. That was a learning experience. So I live forward of what I don't want to experience. So like my collegiate experience, I don't think I ever really wanted to be an engineer. I learned that through my experiences. So as I live forward, I want to learn, I want to use that reflection what I learned back there for me to move forward. So learn backwards to live forward.
I couldn't get the pen out fast enough, and I'm at that age where,
I do know. I do know. Like I realized the other day in 4 years I'll be 70. And I'm like, where does the time go? Like, where does the time go? So that's why now.
Finding golf okay here in Indianapolis.
My husband is a golf fanatic. There is such a thing as a golf widow. And in the morning he says to me, what's today? And I'm like, it's Tuesday. Oh, wow. He's teasing me because he doesn't have to know what today is.
He needs to know which golf course he's going to.
Yes, yes. My husband is a member of an organization called the Nomads, where it's called the Nomads because back in it's been around 50 plus years, blacks could not golf in all the courses. So they didn't have a home, so they called themselves the Nomads. So they travel all around together as a group to golf during the summer and fall months. So that is, he is a fanatic. Anytime he's pumping gas and I look in the mirror and he's going. He's obsessed. So, great guy though.
Yeah, Susan.
Yeah, I just had, so as you came in, not to go back to serious stuff, but to Newfields and they had this mandate to change and you've come in to be and lead that change. Has your vision for what that looks like and theirs aligned, or has that been challenging and how have you addressed that as you
That's a really good question. So in my previous life, I took a small, fragile black college and integrated it into a very prosperous, wealthy city. So it's the reverse. It's taking a very wealthy, perceived elite institution and integrated it into all communities. Same skills, but reverse. So I have a very good board, and people want change until you start changing. So far, I've had a really good experience, and my board is very supportive. I will say that what I thought I would find here, I did not find. Newfields, once again, is not a racist institution. We're a microcosm of society, so we have our challenges. We have challenges. They are immense, but they are not things that can't overcome. It's because we've been traumatized and things that happened over the history of the institution. So we have to do things now like we've got to raise money. So there's a perception because you have a large endowment, you don't need to raise money. That's not true. And we want to do a lot of programming, so we can't draw on our savings account, which we won't have a savings account. So we have to find, these alternative revenue sources, which is the same thing as taking a fragile institution and integrating it into, but it's the reverse. So those are things that that has nothing to do with the board. The board hired me to figure those things out and to do those things under their guidance. So there's nothing in my mind, sitting here right now, that we need to do that we can't do. The challenge for an overachiever like me is pressing myself, making myself be patient, because it's a long journey, and it's not going to happen overnight. So it's staying that persistence and building a strong team, and with any leader in this room knows people come and go. And finding those right fits and keeping the organization stabilized and keeping our focus on our mission. If we stay focused on our mission, we will not fail at this. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Pierce Burnette. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you all.
This up again. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Dr. Pierce Burnette. Maybe not everyone in this room knows that the founder of the Propoleum, May Wright Sewell, was also the woman who founded what has now become Newfields. And so we have that amazing shared history, and much appreciate Dr. Burnette's participation in celebrating that history, doing some restoration work on the TC Still painting that we've had, and the collaboration we'll be able to derive from that, because I think we will be a stronger institution, and we appreciate the participation of you both on our board and in that collaboration. So again, thank you all for coming tonight. Have a great evening.